Hello,
Richard.
hello.
Hi,
Hi,
Richard.
Richard. Welcome.
Happy to see you again
Good
Great
to
to see you too.
in the summer live and now in front of
how's the weather? How's the
hundreds
weather
of people around the world.
in Palo Alto?
Rainy now.
Raining now. Okay.
Oh,
We have
good. That means it's above freezing. I like his
Yeah,
weather
right.
better.
we
At
have
least we have that.
but it's like 18 degrees or something.
I
All
know we're
right.
freezing.
But we should probably get on to my talk since we're running
Absolutely.
late and I have
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
to
Sounds
Go
squeezing
ahead.
in. Not to
Take
rush
it
you.
away. Take it away, Richard.
good to
Okay.
see
Hi, everyone. So, um, my students at Stanford love social dancing for many reasons. Sometimes just to get out of their heads, maybe doing something physical, maybe as stress relief, and of course, interacting with other people. But they do use their minds too when learning these dances. They can be quite introspective sometimes and analytical on how and why we interact with each other through dance. So that is my talk today, sharing some of my students' thoughts, what goes through their minds when it comes to dancing. Now, writing an essay used to be required for my courses. Now it's optional, but they still like to write them. So my students are especially curious, and I love that about them. They're always trying to figure things out and see how any given topic might relate to their world. So for you watching now, I recommend that you do that for the next 45 minutes. And here's what I mean. Most of their essays will be about partnered social dance, which is what I teach, but that likely might not be your kind of dancing. Okay, be curious. What part of their thoughts might relate to your kind of dancing? Or maybe not dance, what part of their thoughts might relate to your personal relationships? So, right now, use your curiosity. And also, before I start, I should mention that all of these essays or excerpts are quoted with their permission. And secondly, I have watched more than one Zoom lecture, haven't you, where the speaker spends a whole hour down in a paper reading something like that. And we like eye contact, don't we? So what I did is I put all of these essays right here on the teleprompter. And I think that's friendlier if I get to look at you. In case you're wondering, wow, Richard is looking at us. Did he memorize all of these essays? Nope. Okay, first one is by Mengyi Zhu. And remember, if she's writing about partner dancing, you can still find some relevance in your life, on the dance floor or off. Okay, quote, I have been trained to always strive for perfection, no matter how painful the process is, and no matter how trivial the end result turns out to be. But most often, perfection is not even the most Pareto efficient outcome. Good enough is. Social dance freed me from the rigid conception how something ought to be. Therefore, I've been able to better enjoy the journey. Social dance values alternate interpretations and accredits individuality within a very broad framework of how a particular movement is supposed to go. Letting go of perfection has allowed me to experiment with different versions of good enough. And that flexibility, in turn, has enabled me to learn from each iteration and discover something perfect in each good enough moment. When I let go of perfection, I become a better version of myself. I am no longer fixated on the intangible ideal. Instead, I calibrate my weaknesses or strengths to the reality that is our dancing partnership, as is happening. Each movement becomes a response to the music, to my partner, to the dynamic environment as I experience it. When I let go of perfection, I let go of the burden to perform to a predefined standard. It's the actual coordinated execution of my partner and I that becomes the benchmark against which any particular movement is measured. When I let go of perfection, I am no longer searching. I began to create. I am no longer pigeonholed into a particular vision. I began to see my horizons broaden as one good enough movement follows another. Perfection is a lonely endeavor, but good enough is rewardingly collaborative. Social dance taught me to see the beauty in the good enough. Okay, continuing that thought, another essay. Anjali Dada also chose to write about perfectionism. She wrote, "Ever since I was a child, my focus was on what had not turned out right, either the mistakes I made or things out of my control, rather than on what I had done correctly or the lessons that I had learned. I got in trouble for not being perfect, even though I did well and tried my best or learned a lot. As a result, I learned to worry irrationally and obsessively about what could go wrong, the catastrophic worst case scenarios. In the process, I started missing out on much of life. So my time at Stanford for the past 2 years has been about developing a healthier and a happier mindset, about being happy with who I am, even though I'm not perfect, about focusing on the beautiful journey instead of external validations of success. To quote Anna Quindlen, she said, "If your success is not on your own terms, if it looks good to the world, but it does not feel good in your heart, it is not success at all." Close quote. So Anjali continues, part of this self-improvement path has been involved in trying new things outside of my comfort zone. These activities give me a microcosm within to practice focusing on the learning process and on enjoying myself instead of feeling pressured to be perfect. So this quarter, I started learning social dance. Well, I was initially a bit worried that the class would challenge my ability to adhere to my newfound values. Because as someone who struggles with coordination and grace and on-the-fly thinking and social intuition, I fretted that I would always be falling behind, and apologizing to partners for making mistakes rather than having fun. Instead, social dance has reinforced the outlook that I have been trying to develop toward life in general. For me, it has been a safe place where I'm respected for being a slow learner rather than judged. It's a place where I am free to make mistakes, which are not mistakes at all, while learning and having fun. I cannot wait for Social Dance 2 next quarter, close quote. Anjali ended up taking 7 of my classes, taking 2 of them twice. By the way, I can quickly explain what Anjali meant by this. Mistakes, which are not mistakes after all. Okay, so I tell my classes that I don't really like that term follow for that role because that's actually not what that role does. They interpret cues actively. So I tell the leads that if you think you gave a cue to go here, but then they went there, your partners did not make a mistake. They made a valid alternate interpretation of your cue. So show your partners that you know that by staying with them wherever they went. They're dancing, try to keep up with them. And that thought will come up again in about 5 minutes, so I thought I should explain it. Okay, this next one is by Vanessa Ochavillo. As a former competitive ballroom dancer, I have been conditioned for precision. Every move has a predetermined count, and arms and legs are calculated to the exact degree. So when people ask me if I dance, I say yes, but I have to clarify that I do choreography, not dancing. Now, since taking Social Dance 1, I realized that my categorization as a choreographed dancer was a necessary distinction to make, because never in my career as a trained dancer did I have to think of anyone outside of myself. Sure, I thought about others, but only to match the movements to look the same. In contrast, when I would take my partner's hand in a social dance, the dance was as much about him as it was about me. Now, it took a little longer to internalize this important difference than I had thought. About 7 weeks into the class, it just clicked. I relaxed the strictness with which I had normally applied to footwork and hand placement, and I let go of the notion that there was only one correct step. The right step was whatever came out of the combination of my partner's leading and my interpreting. This new mode of thinking made me more easygoing on the dance floor, and I was much happier and better for it. This newfound acceptance of whatever the lead threw at me not only made me a better interpreter, but allowed me to better appreciate the different ways that one could do a waltz or salsa or polka and every other style we danced. In class, as I rotated through several partners every few minutes or so, I would no longer think, that was weird. I would now think, that was different, but it worked. The diversity of people's individual styles is one of the wonders of social dancing. For the first time, I learned what it meant to dance. It was not so much about the precision of performance. Instead, it was about being with people who in that moment participated in the same act, joined by the music. It was about sharing a moment with others, and how, in spite of our differences, we're still in step with each other. Okay, the next one was written by Francisco Capistran. After taking Social Dance 1, I understood that connecting with my partner was important. But I thought that having fancy moves was as important. So, with all of the acquired knowledge from Social Dance 1, I decided to take the next level. I thought it was time to add some new fancy moves to my dancing. And although I did learn some new fancy moves, I found out that fancy moves are not nearly as important as connecting with my partner. So to illustrate this point, Francisco related a story. I was about to practice at some salsa at a social gathering around that time. I danced some salsa and merengue with a girl, although at that time I only knew some basic steps from Social Dance 1. She was later dancing with some other guys that had some really fancy moves, and I assumed that she would rather dance with them for the rest of the night. But after that, she looked for me, and we danced together for the remainder of the night. So I asked her, was there any particular reason why she wanted to dance with me? To which she replied that with me, she felt a gentle yet clear lead instead of being thrown around. She also mentioned that she would rather have a good connection with a partner than having a bunch of fancy moves thrown at her. Enjoying the music and dancing with and for my partner is, in my opinion, the most important thing I learned this quarter. Parentheses, of course, I did not mind the fancy moves that we covered. Hey, I love this next one. Are you still awake? You know, you can always stand up and move around if you fall asleep. This one is short, part of an essay by Valeria Wu. She grew up in Lima, Peru, where she picked up salsa just by seeing it a lot. Everybody in her village did, so not everyone knew what they were doing. So in her essay, she wrote, I used to think that being a good dancer meant that you could easily follow people who dance really well. Then I learned that those who are true dancers are those who can have fun with someone who doesn't know how to dance at all, laughing at every misstep, getting back on the beat, and smiling to your partner to make them feel more confident. These are skills that can take you very far in life. The fundamental idea of putting yourself in someone else's shoes and empathizing is crucial for life. After all, knowledge can only take you so far. It's the meaningful connections that you create with people that truly make the difference. Close quote. And that's her essay. Now, my students have developed a lifelong habit of wondering if they're doing something correctly, all through the schooling, right? So I tell them that when it comes to social dancing, how can you tell if you're doing it correctly? Well, if you and your partner are having fun, then you're doing it correctly. That's the definition of social. It means kind, friendly. So why do people go dancing? To have fun. And maybe just to feel a little bit better about themselves. And you can help. That's what Valeria was saying. So to temporary digression here from reading student essays, did you notice these three have been pretty much on the same subject? So to elaborate on that point that Valeria Wu was making, if someone were to ask me to reduce what social dancing is about to the fewest word possible, I would say other people. And in folk dancing, it's absolutely the same, isn't it? That's what folk dancing is about, other people. So when students walk into our huge dance studio each day, I have a quote of the day on this big display screen. And many of the quotes of the day are on this topic that Valeria has been talking about being aware of other people. So if you have been using your curiosity to find relevance in those few essays to your life, even if you don't do partner dancing, well, most of these quotations were not about dancing. So, and we were applying them to our dancing or to people or to relating to others in general. So let me change this here. Okay. These are short quotes. Here are some from Stephen Jarrett. Intelligence will only take you so far. Over the long run, how you relate to others is more important. This one from Maya Angelou, I'm sure you've heard this one before. I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Isn't that true? Oh, I tell my students, don't worry about making a mistake. That's what you do. But they'll remember how you feel. Look at them, smile. They'll remember that. Here's a related one from Dale Carnegie. You can make more friends in a month by becoming interested in other people than you can in a year by trying to get other people interested in you. This next one is from Dick Crum, one of my favorite teachers ever. Yours also, right? So you might have heard this one. Beginning dancer knows nothing. Intermediate dancer knows everything. Too good to dance with beginners. Hotshot dancer, too good to dance with anyone. Advanced dancers, he dances with everyone. She dances with everyone, especially beginners. This one from Theodore Rubin. Kindness is more important than wisdom. And the recognition of this is the beginning of wisdom. I love Robert Heinlein's definition of love, which also applies to dancing with others. Love is the condition in which the happiness of another person is essential to your own. Isn't that great? Love is the condition in which the happiness of another person is essential to your own. That's so true. So actually, the greatest gift we can give to another is rapt attention to one another's existence. And one more from the wonderful film critic, Roger Ebert. The term coming of age always seems to apply to teenagers, but you can come of age in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or maybe never. I define it as beginning to value people for who they are, rather than what they can do for you. Okay, moving on. Many students tell me that one of the greatest benefits that they gained from these classes is learning how to deal with making mistakes or dealing with failure, dealing with it successfully and confidently. So, new topic here. Vince Ranganathan wrote, I often apologize. I say sorry for the misstep, for mixing up two moves, for forgetting a move, or for not communicating my intentions better. Now, there are times in which an apology is necessary, like when a toe is accidentally stepped on, but the reality is that most of the time, an apology isn't necessary. I've realized that it's actually detrimental to repeatedly apologize for small errors. It signals to my partner, I'm sorry you have to deal with this. But if instead I laugh it off, then they laugh too. The interaction changes from me annoying them with constant redundant apologies to us sharing smiles. And then it's an upward spiral of energy from there. The message that I convey is, I made a mistake. Let's keep on going and have some fun with it. And the reception is more positive than self-deprecation. So my plan of action when I mess up is to laugh. At worst, I'll look a little silly, but I'll still be having a good time. At best, my partner will start laughing too, and we'll both be having a good time. When the other option is saying sorry 20 times and ending the dance on awkward terms, the right choice is clear. So I read these essays about mistakes in my class. And on the display screen to reinforce them are quotes of the day, like this one. A mistake is a lesson, not a loss. It's a temporary detour, not a dead end. I love that one because that's exactly how a mistake feels while dancing. It feels like a temporary detour. And the new scenery on that detour is always interesting. John Sanderson wrote, the following observation came while I was sick and watching from the class from the balcony. By now, I've come to know who some of the more experienced dancers in the class are. I had a good vantage point from the balcony to notice who seemed to have the capacity to be playful with these variations. Now, in observing these leads and follows, I was struck by the fact that they made mistakes just as frequently as everyone else, but they bounced back from them much more easily. Whereas less confident dancers would be thrown off for several measures by such a mistake or stop completely, those I was observing were promptly right back into the swing of things, laughing it off with their partners. They seem to have better internalized the idea that we all strive for, to dance for the sheer enjoyment of it. So recently, I have been reading about the habits that top students have in common. One misconception is that they are a very organized, driven breed who put in place solid time management systems and show indefatigable discipline in adhering to them throughout college. But interviews with them, however, have shown that they are just as prone to get off track or fall behind in classes. They are distinct, though, in their ability to bounce back, to get back on track, and to contain the damage of momentarily falling behind. Apparently, excellence in dancing, as in academics, is more about resilience than immaculate consistency. Close quote. And the playwright Bertolt Brecht would have agreed. Quote, intelligence is not to make no mistakes, but to see how to make them good. And that's exactly what John Sanderson was observing. So I tell my students that social and competition ballroom dance are both valid avocations, but they have a big difference in the attitude considering mistakes. Judges deduct points for every mistake. So competitive dance culture is aligned against making mistakes from day one. If a follow does something different from what the lead intended, that's to be eliminated. Competitive dancers work hard to achieve as close as they can to 100%. But in social dancing, mistakes are accepted as inevitable. Laugh them off and move on. Happy if things work out 80% of the time. And what about that other 20%? That's when most learning happens. Besides, as I mentioned, mistakes aren't always mistakes. They're valid alternate interpretations. Striving to do something correctly, that has only one answer. But saying, that worked and it didn't feel wrong, that has 100 right answers. So I tell my students, Think of that first nanosecond of a mistake as the beginning of something new. At that first moment of, oops, see if you can welcome that chance intrusion as an opening to a new figure. Or maybe it's a new conclusion to the figure that was intended. It's just a detour. Think of it as exploring new territory. Thinking of it as making something up as you go. Think of it as creative expression. The cartoonist Scott Adams said, creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes. Art is knowing which ones to keep. I tell them so be curious, learn from mistakes. But what do we want to learn? How to avoid future mistakes? Nope, that's ballroom. We want to learn what else is possible. And we learn how to keep moving through a mistake as if it was intentional. Notice all of these things also apply to life in general. But this one is for dance. The Argentine tango teacher, Susanna Miller, she gave advice from a follow. Quote, don't try to be correct. Don't avoid mistakes or your feet will have tension. Rather, make mistakes freely and enjoy them. Step wherever you step, boldly and confidently, close quote. The philosopher Albert Hubbard said, the greatest mistake you can make is to be afraid of making one. And finally, on this topic, Brandon Azad, he took Social Dance 1 as a follow. He wrote, quote, I have taken Social Dance 1 before as a lead a year ago, and I remember worrying that my partners were not enjoying themselves if I messed something up, or if I didn't remember all of the figures that we had learned. And I apologized profusely. However, taking Social 1 from the follows perspective has helped me appreciate that partnering is an unscripted communication. And while sometimes things don't work out as intended or completely fall apart, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and definitely not something that one should feel bad for. Dancing now from the follows perspective, I'd occasionally see the same guilt and apology that I once felt as a lead. But on none of those occasions was I not having a blast. I, from a year ago, probably would not have believed that I, as a follow, really don't mind the mess-ups. I definitely would not have believed that half the time that I heard oops or sorry while following, I didn't even notice any awkwardness in the dance at all. So realizing that I still enjoy dancing as a follow when my partner messes up has really boosted my confidence as both a lead and a follow. Before, I took that phrase, the lead is dancing for the follow. I took that too literally. So I worried that my indecision or unclear leads would ruin my partner's experience. Now I understand that dancing for your partner does not mean perfectly so she always knows exactly every move, but it means you're in a dialogue with your partner. The point is to be there for your partner, to keep communication open as each figure flows into the next, and to enjoy each other's company. Many essays are written by women talking about the follow role. As you can imagine, we have many intelligent, strong, empowered women at Stanford. In both Social Dance 2 and 3, I teach role reversal, so everyone tries both roles. And I'm always impressed at the many ways that women find enjoyment, pleasure, completion, satisfaction in the follow role. They know it's not subservient in any way. My talk tomorrow, we'll talk more about that at the same time tomorrow in the story of the French Apache dance. So I have a lot of students, as you might know. See, right now there are 130 students in Social Dance 1 class, and Social 3, that's smaller, 120 students in that class. And I've been teaching for 31 years now. So altogether, I have read many thousands of essays. And in all of those together, I've only found one that complained about the follow role, that it was unfair to women because they don't have equal control. And that one essay was written by a man. who thought it was the only way that one could be happy. So here is an essay by Anne-Laure Cuvier on the follow role. Being a dancer reminds me of skiing. I grew up in a ski resort, which means that skiing became a part of my life. When I first skied, I had to learn every single move and consciously turn, stabilize myself, and then think about the next turn. But slowly I became more proficient until I didn't need to think about turning. And instead, I just focused on where I wanted to go, and I would go there. So later on, I was able to enjoy the landscape and the flow of my skiing. Dancing is similar. At first, we need to focus on the steps, but somewhere along the way, your focus shifts to your partner and the dancing flow and the music and the other couples dancing. Okay, next similarity. In skiing, you can choose to stick to the classical style, or you can experiment with new moves. You can be a show-off or a modest skier. In similar ways, social dancing is the style that works. That is a good style. It doesn't need to be the most beautiful way to perform as long as you're enjoying it. It's the same in dancing. Another similarity, as a follow in dance, you interpret the signs of your partner. In skiing, your partner, so to speak, is the terrain. You interpret the slope, the snow, and navigate around trees and obstacles. In social dance, you interpret the gesture and body position of your partner and navigate through other couples in the room. I find it relaxing and mentally challenging at the same time. It's relaxing because the follow doesn't have to decide all of the figures and get overwhelmed. Now, in skiing on groomed slopes, you do have the freedom to go anywhere, but I think it's boring. I prefer to have a more challenging terrain, dictating your lines. That makes things more interesting. That's why I prefer being a follow, because it works in the same way. Instead of being overwhelmed by all of the figures possible, I enjoy interpreting what's going on and responding quickly. It's very relaxing and at the same time, a constant puzzle to solve. All of this is why I love skiing so much and why I learned to love social dancing this quarter. Continuing that topic of the follow's role in social dancing, this is by Eleanor Collier. This past quarter, I have had some incredible conversations. Very few of them have involved any talking. Rather, I have learned to converse through movement, through the subtle voice of two bodies connecting. Part of the joy of this conversation is speaking. This quarter, I stopped trying to dance the correct way or execute figures with perfect precision, and I started moving my body in a way that expresses who I am, that shouts my intrinsic joy for living. As my speech and dance has grown in clarity and confidence, so have my interactions outside of dance. I have learned to own the parts of myself that are silly or flawed or idiosyncratic, and to say them as loudly or quietly as need be said. But equally enjoyable, if not more enjoyable, is listening. I often close my eyes when I dance, not on purpose, but simply because I get lost in the beautiful silent sound of my partner's dance voice. Every partner has something different to say. Careful listening makes the difference between speaking and speaking with someone. When partners listen closely to one another, they transform from two people expressing themselves in a self-focused, disconnected manner into two people communicating, combining their self-expressions in a more beautiful creation than either one could create alone. And a third element of the conversation unique to dance is the dialogue between both the partners and the music. I have realized that music is so much more than a beat to keep track of what step we're on. It's a tug and pull of sounds and emotions that one can listen and respond to, just as if responding to another person. The most exquisite moments take place when partners communicate with the music as well with each other. In short, what I have learned this quarter: listen, respond, listen, respond, listen. Okay, at the beginning of my talk, I suggested that you might try to find relevance in these essays to your own life, even if you don't do social dancing. I think this next one about dance partners might easily have a relevance to interacting with people in general, perhaps with a significant other with whom you might live. It's by Julie Quintero, who returns to the topic of other people. I've spent a lot of time this quarter thinking about empathy. Empathy asks us to get out of our heads and into another's. It asks us to see the world through the lens that is not our own. Social dance asks us to keep a nimble mind that is always attuned to your partner. That alone is an exercise in empathy. In fact, our sense of empathy must be so sharp that we try to understand others' needs and desires, not through words, but through subtle body movements. A twist of a wrist here, a shift of weight here, the way that they look at you. Not only are we learning to tune in via body language, we are also doing so in a matter of seconds, in real time, reading and reacting in a constant loop of empathic effort. In doing so, empathy asks us to understand rather than judge our partner. As one of the least experienced dancers in social dance too, I experienced a wide range of empathic responses from various partners, some of whom would impatiently react to my mistakes and mishaps, perhaps with disapproving looks or frustrated grimaces. Others of whom would smile and kindly guide me toward the right steps and turns. I feared the former. I thrived with the latter. I will always be grateful for the partners who took the extra effort to extend empathy toward me, to remember what it was like when they were first learning, to tune in to the rather nervousness in my movements, and to calm me with reassuring smiles. But I am also grateful to the partners who may have been less than empathic toward me. I'd like to think of them as my own empathetic challenge, a unique opportunity to practice understanding toward a non-understanding person. Okay, why might this person be frustrated? What does this experience feel like for him? I'd like to believe that this sharpened my ability to take perspective and tune into my partner's beliefs, desires, knowledge, precepts, thoughts or feelings, and intentions. In this way, social dance has helped me to become not only a better dancer, but also a better person. This next one is by Justin Salom. Social Dance 1 has truly enriched my perspective on partnering. I'm from a very musical background. I played classical piano since I was 5 years old. Now, in playing the piano, the flow of communication goes like a straight line, from my fingers to the piano, to the sound that is produced, to the listener. But in social dancing, it is quite a different experience. It is more of a full circle of communication rather than a line, because my body is interacting with my partners, and the response is a reciprocal interaction with mine. Instead of just absorbing like a listening audience, the phrase, the phrase "you were dancing for your partner," that took a while to settle in and to truly internalize. When I first heard that term mentioned in class, I automatically gave it the musician's interpretation, that my partner was simply the output result of my input. It was only after dancing with a number of different partners that I began to realize that social dance was a conversation. And here the word conversation implies that it is a two-way and reciprocal dynamic. It is a conversation in which we ask each other questions and respond to them. And in order to make a dance work, there must be balance and equality between you and your partner. Now, every dance is necessarily your best dance. Messing up a dance move and your partner being okay with it is similar to telling a friend a bad joke and them laughing and going with it anyway. But then the feeling of truly connecting with someone while dancing, that is so fantastic that it's hard to even describe. The next two essays are about which dances students particularly like and why. At Stockton Camp, as you might know, we always have a mixer on opening night, and again on most evening parties. So this is why Isabella Saraco likes them. She wrote this just last quarter. If I had to choose a favorite dance that I learned this quarter, either in class or while going out dancing, I would choose any of the mixers that I've had the chance to do. My favorite part of these dances is the element of chaos that they bring onto the dance floor. So it's no surprise that the chaos mixer is my favorite of all of the mixers that we did at the Stanford Big Dance. By the way, Steve Kotansky, co-host, is the person who named that the chaos mixer years ago. She continued, those mixers were so much fun because of how quickly we learned them. As a beginner, I didn't feel I was especially behind any of the other dancers. And it was so fun and satisfying to feel like I was learning these dances with other dancers as I went along. There was a lot of laughing together at the mistakes and getting to dance with so many new people. To me, mixers feel like the most social dances because of how easy it is to forget about any mistakes I make and just to have fun dancing with each new person. And Ivan Suarez Robles especially likes waltzing. And I will refer to this essay again tomorrow in my talk about competition ballroom waltz, which is within my Apache dance talk. Quote, I've taken social dance 1, 2, and 3 as a lead, and I'm currently taking social dance 1 as a follow. I find that leading in general is hard. Following is hard. Switching back and forth between both is very hard. Then we got to waltz. As we waltz, I'd square up the frame. I'd actively add rotation. I'd always look to where I'm going. As the follow, the question was, am I leading or am I following? I can't answer that question quite definitively. And that's what I love about the waltz. With waltz, the beauty is that even though there are two separate roles, they each support each other with a striking similarity. Both lead and follow look where they're going. They both hang back and actively rotate each other. They both navigate on the dance floor. It's even possible to switch roles while waltzing. Even though the lead is the main pilot, the follow is an active co-pilot. Both roles work together in order to be able to waltz within the chaos happening on the dance floor. After this realization, I came to enjoy the waltz even more than I previously did. After learning waltz as a follow, I started leading and following better. My guess is that I realized that I shouldn't separate the two roles so much. With waltz, I started paying attention to the similarities as opposed to the differences between the two roles, especially the similarity that both roles will always have in common, being there for your partner. I love this next one by Cynthia Shee. Do any of you know of the singer-songwriter Vienna Ting? She is amazing. Search Vienna Ting on YouTube videos, and you'll not only find many videos of her singing, her compositions, but also many other artists singing covers of her songs or remixes of her compositions. So she wrote this essay when she was a student taking my class. Now, the context for her essay is that when I teach cross-step waltz in Social Dance 2, I have follows close their eyes while waltzing. This has two purposes. Follows often rely mostly on what they see while dancing, which is good, but this exercise helps them attune to all of those more subtle physical cues that the leads give through the physical connection. And then for the leads, this exercise emphasizes that they are really dancing for their partner, not showing off themselves. When their partners are swirling around a room in traffic with their eyes closed, leads need to be completely focused on their partner's care, dancing for their partner. Hey, I also love the fact in this essay that Cynthia Vienna simply turned in a letter that she had written home to her parents. Quote, "My morning was absolutely wonderful. Monday mornings start with a dance class where we're currently learning cross-step waltz. I've got a friend named Dan, whom I met last year in Social Dance 1. He's also a fellow pre-med, as we discovered later. Anyway, he was my second partner this morning, and we were cruising around the room, gliding along like water, when the instructor said, 'Follows, now close your eyes.' So I closed them. It was scary at first. Waltzing involves a lot of navigating, as you may know, especially in a room full of people going in all random directions. I started worrying a lot about where I was stepping and how far I was turning. But then I gave up worrying. The person leading me, I realized, knew what he was doing, and all I had to do was attune myself to the signals that he was giving me. So I stopped thinking and let a different kind of awareness take over, an awareness that's sharp and responsive. You become acutely aware of the signals you're given because you rely on them for your every move. Yet somehow you're completely relaxed, natural, if you will, effortless, not the kind of mindset I have very often. Elation, let me tell you. There's a very pure joy that arises from this sort of thing. When you summon the courage to go blindly into a confusing world, letting yourself trust someone completely, even if it means you might get hurt, going into it with some unshakable faith that this person will guide you and keep you safe. And when you let go, nothing goes wrong. You keep dancing, maybe flying. Grace and unity and direction all preserved. This is what love must be like, I said to myself. This is what religion must be like. Poor Dan couldn't understand any of this for the life of him. "That was so cool," I exclaimed when the music stopped, throwing my arms around him in a bear hug and laughing out of sheer happiness. "Wasn't that amazing, Dan?" He gave me one of those bewildered faces. "Sure, it worked, I guess. I was just doing what I usually do." No, you don't understand. It worked. I was just following you, and it worked." Yes, but aren't you normally following me?" I struggled to explain. But it's really different with my eyes closed. It's this whole different perspective. I guess you didn't have it because your eyes were open. Finally, he just grinned at me. "Well, I'm happy for you, Cynthia." Okay, we have time for one more by Saloni Sanwaka. Now, as I mentioned, the quotes of the day are on a large display screen on her dance studio, and Saloni will refer to one of those quotes of the day by Daniel Goleman. So here is Saloni's essay, read as always with her permission. And she begins the essay by quoting herself. Quote, "His palms are sweaty. He doesn't know how to keep time. He moves his hips too much. He has no idea what he's doing." Close quote. I am reminded of my distaste for human contact, and I wonder why I took a class that involves so much of it. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, people touching me on my shoulder and my hand. What was the point of this? Quote, "Self-absorption kills empathy. When we focus on ourselves, our world contracts as our own problems loom large. But when we focus on others, our world expands." Close quote. Well, I see this displayed on the screen, and I am aware that I am being rather intolerant. Okay, a simple understanding. This is not about me. In this class, I am not dancing. We are dancing. It's not about my body moving in isolation. It's two bodies mirroring each other. This is human contact with synchronization. parallel movements that together create a single movement. Dancing is human contact that allows you to touch what your partner is thinking. Isn't that a beautiful statement? I quoted that line in my Cross-Step Waltz book. Back to her essay. Dancing is having an idea that is yours, that retains a piece of you, lead or follow, and translates it into motion. It's trying to interpret and adapt to movements and touches that your partner's not even made yet. Well, no wonder his palms are sweaty. No wonder he can't always keep time. No wonder his hips move too much. He's beautiful. He does have an idea. He knows what he's doing. I just hadn't moved past my annoyance to understand it yet. I'm glad I met you. I'm glad we touched. And that is my talk here.
Wow, Richard. That was beautiful. And, I want to thank you and your students for their generosity. But as you said, I was going to say, I want to thank you for your wisdom, but now I'm going to say, I want to thank you for your kindness. I love that line. And there were so many things that I learned from that about, like you said, life, the deeper truths and meaning of dance. And you did this so beautifully, you and your students. And I'm a stickler. I love all the language references because the conversations, the dialogue, and I love that speech in dance. And you had another one, my dance voice. What a wonderful way of bringing that all together. And the last thing I'll say before I let Randy say something is, I'm sure you know the quote from Miles Davis: "Do not fear mistakes. There are none."
There are no wrong notes. They're just new ones. Yeah.
Right.
Really, absolutely fabulous, Richard. And before I forget, I want to remind you to save the chat. And you want to see what people were writing in chat while you were giving this lecture, because the comments are wonderful.
Remind me one more time. Part of my screen is covered up here. If it's up at the top.
It depends on your screen. It should be up at the top. 3 little dots.
Yeah. Okay.
And to save. Okay.
And before you have to leave, can you tell us tomorrow how this is? You have a second talk.
Thank you, Steve. Yes. So at the same time, 12:30. This is a more involved one with 333 slides, several film clips on the bizarre dance of the French Apache dance. And it also involves actually women's empowerment. And then it gets into its influence on tango and maybe a little bit of debatable topic on how it might influence competition ballroom waltz, a topic I've never talked about before and anything online before. That'll be new.
Well, looking forward to that. That sounds great.
It's funny because someone was talking about ice dancing on the chats. And I was, as a very young student, I was with a bunch of Stanford students when I was a teenager in Palo Alto, and we went down to Los Angeles to perform with a group at the Irwin Parnes International Dance. It's a big thing at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. And the featured act that year was an Apache dance on roller skates.
Yeah. There's a picture of that. Exactly that.
It was very funny. Anyway.
Richard, I was going to ask Richard one quick thing. Are you going to be sharing these quotes on a resource page?
Okay. Is there a place to put them? Because some of these talks, for instance, that whole string of quotes on mistakes, that actually they're all on a web page that I have. So I just need to know where to put that link.
Okay, just get me in touch with Adoni and he'll put it on. On the website. That would be wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And we see you same time tomorrow. It was great. As usual, you never disappoint.
Thank you, Randy.